At exactly 7:14 p.m. on December 18, 2024, I watched my 10-year-old son, Ethan, carefully wrap the last handmade wooden Christmas star in brown craft paper while my 7-year-old daughter, Lily, tied a crooked red ribbon around it. My name is Claire, I'm 38, and I work as a pediatric occupational therapist. Those stars had become our family tradition because my late grandfather taught me to carve one every December. My children had spent 14 hours making 6 of them as gifts for our relatives. For days later, one text message erased every reason they had made them. Months afterward, that same wooden star would be sitting alone on my front porch, covered with melting snow. Here's what nobody understood about that Christmas, or about the years leading up to it. The invitation wasn't what broke our family. It simply revealed a ranking system that had been quietly running for decades. In my parents' house, appearances carried more weight than intentions. The handmade wooden star became the perfect symbol of that without any of us noticing. My children carved theirs by hand, uneven edges and all. My mother displayed expensive crystal ornaments imported from Italy, each costing more than $120, while our little wooden stars were politely moved toward the back of the tree every year. Nobody ever said they looked cheap. They simply weren't considered important. When my younger brother, Daniel, started dating Vanessa 18 months earlier, everything shifted even further. Vanessa worked in luxury marketing, wore cream-colored cashmere even to casual lunches, and somehow made everyone feel underdressed without saying a word. My mother began asking Vanessa where holiday decorations should go instead of asking me. My father started describing Daniel as the successful one, despite the fact that I had spent 12 years helping children learn to walk and write. Looking back, I can't pretend I was only a victim. Every time I noticed one of those quiet little rankings, I smiled, changed the subject, and told myself family peace mattered more than fairness. By staying silent, I helped normalize it. That's why I made absolutely certain there could be no misunderstanding about Christmas. On December 3, my mother texted the family group confirming dinner at her house for December 24th at 6:00 p.m. I replied immediately. On December 8, I asked again while my Aunt Susan and Cousin Mark stood beside me in my parents' kitchen. On December 15, I even sent another message confirming that Ethan had prepared his violin piece and Lily was bringing the wooden stars. Every response came back with a cheerful thumbs up. As I gathered my phone that afternoon, Vanessa laughed softly and said, "Well, some people simply don't fit the atmosphere." Everyone smiled as though she'd made a harmless joke. I wish I had understood she wasn't joking at all. At 8:43 p.m. on December 20, my phone buzzed while I was standing in the kitchen, brushing sawdust off the last handmade wooden star before spraying it with a clear protective finish. Ethan was reading on the couch. Lily was humming Christmas songs while arranging tissue paper inside gift bags. The message came from my mother. Claire, we've decided it would be better if you and the kids skipped Christmas Eve this year. Vanessa feels the evening should stay small and elegant. The children have so much energy, and she wants everyone comfortable. We hope you understand. I read it 3 times before I noticed the second message. Some people simply don't fit the atmosphere. It wasn't even my mother's phrase. It belonged to Vanessa. The room suddenly felt impossibly quiet. 6 finished wooden stars sat across the dining table, each tagged with a family member's name in Lily's careful handwriting. The one marked Grandma had tiny carved snowflakes because Lily remembered my mother loved them. I wasn't looking at unfinished decorations anymore. I was looking at gifts made for people who had quietly decided my children were the problem. I called my mother immediately. She answered on the 3rd ring. "There isn't anything personal about this," she said before I could finish asking what had happened. "Vanessa has worked so hard planning the evening. You're asking your grandchildren not to come to Christmas. We're asking for one peaceful dinner." Then, almost word for word, she repeated it. "Some people simply don't fit the atmosphere." She said it gently. That somehow hurt even more. Neither Ethan nor Lily cried when I finally explained why Christmas Eve had changed. Ethan looked at the 6 wooden stars for a long moment before asking, Should I sand Grandpa's one a little smoother before we put it away? Not throw it away. Not break it. Just put it away. Lily quietly removed the ribbon she'd picked for Grandma's gift, folded it into a perfect square, and placed it back in the craft box. "I'm sure Vanessa likes quiet," she whispered. "Maybe we'll be too loud." That sentence followed me for months. Children naturally assume they're the reason adults behave badly. Watching mine do exactly that forced me to replay years I had spent excusing things I shouldn't have. Daniel's birthdays had always determined the family calendar. My promotions somehow became conversations about his investments. When Ethan was born 2 weeks early, my parents visited for exactly 45 minutes because Daniel had tickets to a charity gala. Every slight had seemed too small to confront on its own. Together, they formed a pattern I had chosen not to see. I hadn't just been wronged. I'd participated by teaching my children that swallowing disappointment was what loving your family looked like. The next morning, I called my Aunt Susan first. She sighed before I even finished. "Claire, don't make this into a thing. Vanessa's trying to make a good impression. It's only one dinner." Only one dinner. As if childhood memories were replaceable. Then I called my father. He sounded impatient. "You know how important appearances are with Daniel's future," he said. "Why create unnecessary tension? Just celebrate on the 25th. As though Christmas Eve could simply be rescheduled because someone prettier wanted quieter company. I hung up feeling strangely calm. Not because anything had improved. Because I had finally stopped expecting help from people determined not to see the problem. The only person who reacted differently was my neighbor, Maria, who had known my children since they were toddlers. She listened without interrupting, then asked one simple question. "They excluded the kids?" "Yes." She was silent for several seconds. Then she said, "Claire, you don't have to keep asking people to make room for children who already belong there." Something inside me settled. Not healed. Settled. Even so, I wanted to leave no room for anyone to claim I hadn't tried. That afternoon, I sent one final message into the family group. Asterisk, if a full Christmas Eve feels overwhelming, Ethan and Lily can come for dessert at 7:30. They'll give everyone their gifts, play one song on the violin, stay 30 minutes, and then we'll leave. No inconvenience. No disruption. Asterisk. I read it twice before pressing send. My mother's reply appeared 12 minutes later. Asterisk, that won't work. Vanessa has a vision for the evening. Asterisk. A minute after that came another message, this time from Daniel. Asterisk, Claire, please stop putting mom and dad in the middle. If you keep pushing this, people are going to remember who created the family drama. Don't make us choose sides over one holiday. Asterisk. Then Vanessa sent her only message. Asterisk, some people simply don't fit the atmosphere. Asterisk. There it was again. Not just a sentence anymore. An ultimatum wrapped in perfect manners. I stared at Vanessa's last message until the screen dimmed. For the first time in years, I realized I had been fighting for a better position inside a system that was never designed to include us equally. Every holiday, every birthday, every family dinner had become another audition. I was exhausted from trying to earn invitations that should never have required qualifications. So I stopped. Not dramatically. Not publicly. Just completely. The next morning at 9:10 a.m., I called the community center 2 blocks from our house. Their small hall had become available because another group had canceled. The rental fee was $185. It included folding tables, 40 chairs, and access from 3:00 p.m. until 10:00 p.m. on Christmas Eve. I booked it before I could talk myself out of it. Maria volunteered to cook her famous baked ziti. My coworker Jason offered smoked turkey. Mrs. Hernandez from across the street promised cinnamon rolls. Within 48 hours, 15 people had offered to bring something. I still kept 4 empty seats at one table. One for my mother. One for my father. One for Daniel. One for Vanessa. Not because I expected them to come. Because I wanted my children to know that kindness doesn't disappear just because someone refuses it. As I taped a hand-drawn seating chart to the refrigerator, Ethan looked up and asked, "Are Grandma and Grandpa really invited?" "They are." "What if they don't come?" "Then their chairs will stay empty." He nodded as though that answer made perfect sense. Maybe it did. That afternoon, I found myself writing a family announcement. The first draft lasted exactly 30 seconds before I deleted it. Asterisk, if elegance matters more than grandchildren, enjoy your perfect Christmas. Asterisk. Gone. The second draft wasn't any better. Asterisk, don't worry. Our chaos won't embarrass anyone ever again. Asterisk. Delete. Those messages would have satisfied my anger for 5 minutes and embarrassed me for years. So I closed my eyes, took one slow breath, and typed what I actually wanted history to remember. Asterisk, since our plans have changed, Ethan, Lily, and I will be hosting Christmas Eve at the Maple Street Community Hall beginning at 5 p.m. Everyone is welcome. There is no pressure, no expectations, and no need to respond. We simply hope everyone finds peace wherever they celebrate. Asterisk. I pressed send at 4:27 p.m. No accusations. No evidence attached. No attempt to win. Just a door left unlocked. The first reply came from Aunt Susan. Asterisk, hope it goes well. Asterisk. Then silence. Almost an hour later, my mother finally responded. Asterisk, we'll keep our original plans. Asterisk. Nothing more. No mention of the children. No acknowledgement of why our plans had changed. Just one short sentence that treated the entire situation like a scheduling conflict instead of a wound. Christmas Eve arrived cold enough that everyone's breath turned white outside the hall. By 5:18 p.m., every table was full. Children colored paper snowflakes on the floor. Someone's playlist skipped from Bing Crosby to 1990s pop music. Jason accidentally burned the first tray of dinner rolls, and everyone laughed while opening the windows for fresh air. Nothing matched. Everything belonged. At my parents' house, I later learned from Cousin Mark, dinner began exactly on time. The crystal glasses reflected candlelight perfectly. The place cards were handwritten in gold ink. Vanessa complimented the centerpiece for nearly 5 minutes. Only 8 people attended. Conversation stayed polite. Nobody lingered after dessert. Meanwhile, Ethan quietly carried a cardboard box to the front of our room. Inside were the 6 handmade wooden Christmas stars. I still think people should have these, he said. He called each guest forward one by one. Mrs. Hernandez cried when he handed her the one with tiny carved snowflakes because he'd learned she had lost her husband the previous winter. Jason ran his fingers across the rough edges and said it was the nicest Christmas gift he'd received in years. Maria immediately hung hers on the community hall tree. By the time Ethan reached the last star, there wasn't a single one left in the box. Not because every relative had come. Because every gift had found someone who genuinely valued it. Watching my children smile again should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt quieter than that. Peace isn't the same as winning. Sometimes it's simply the moment you stop asking people to measure your worth. Late that night, while folding tablecloths into neat stacks, Maria rested a hand on my shoulder. You know, she said softly, your parents didn't become this way overnight. They've spent years believing appearances keep people safe. They probably think they're protecting the family image. I nodded. Understanding someone isn't the same thing as excusing them. As we switched off the hall lights at 9:46 p.m., I looked back at the empty space where our wooden stars had been displayed only hours earlier. For the first time in a very long time, the absence didn't feel like loss. It felt like something precious had finally been placed exactly where it belonged. 3 weeks after Christmas, on January 16th at 4:12 p.m., my doorbell rang while I was helping Lily finish a school science project at the kitchen table. Through the window, I saw my parents standing on the porch with Daniel behind them. Vanessa wasn't there. For years, whenever my parents wanted to talk, everyone else adjusted their schedules. This time, I finished helping Lily glue the last label onto her display board, wash the paintbrushes, and let nearly 12 minutes pass before opening the door. Not to punish them. Just to remind myself that I no longer had to abandon my own life the moment they appeared. My father started with his familiar tone. We've all had time to calm down. I smiled politely, but didn't step aside. My mother tried the softer version. We're family. Let's not drag this out. Neither approach worked because they both assumed the conversation was still about my feelings. It wasn't. I invited them inside, poured coffee into 4 mismatched mugs, and let silence settle over the room before anyone spoke again. Eventually my father sighed. "I suppose you're still upset." "No," I answered honestly. "I'm just finished pretending this was only about me." The room grew very still. For the first time since Christmas, nobody rushed to fill the silence. Then my mother asked a question I never expected to hear. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Do the children still think we don't love them?" There it was. Not an excuse. Not a defense. Just fear. I could have answered immediately. Instead, I looked toward the hallway where Ethan and Lily were laughing over a board game, completely unaware that the adults were finally having the conversation they should have had weeks earlier. "They're children," I said quietly. "They believe what the people they trust show them." My father lowered his eyes. No one argued. No one blamed Vanessa. No one blamed me. Then I told them the only condition that mattered. "If you want to rebuild this family, don't start with me. Start with Ethan and Lily. Don't apologize because you want access to them. Apologize because they deserved better than being treated like guests in their own family." Nobody negotiated. Nobody asked for exceptions. About 20 minutes later, I watched my parents walk into the living room where the children were building a blanket fort. What happened next became the most important conversation our family ever had. I won't repeat it here. Some moments belong to the people who live them, not to the story afterward. I only know that my mother cried. My father cried too, though he tried to hide it. When they finally left that evening, Ethan quietly hugged both of them without anyone asking him to. That was enough for me. The following December looked very different. Christmas Eve no longer belonged to one house. It belonged to whoever wanted to come. Our new tradition was simple. Every guest arrived carrying one handmade ornament. Before dinner, each person hung it together on a large wooden Christmas star mounted on the wall of our dining room. No expensive decorations competed for attention. No one voted on whose ornament looked elegant enough. Every piece stayed exactly where it was placed. Even my mother brought one. It wasn't expensive. Just a small wooden snowflake she admitted she'd carved herself after watching online tutorials for several evenings. She hesitated before hanging it beside Ethan's first uneven star. Not at the front. Not hidden in the back. Right beside it. She didn't announce that she'd changed. She simply stopped rearranging everyone else. Daniel still came every year. So did Vanessa. The first Christmas after everything happened, she arrived carrying homemade bread instead of designer chocolates. She complimented Lily's messy icing on the cookies without trying to improve them. Later, when several children accidentally knocked over a bowl of popcorn, she was the first person on the floor helping clean it up. She never repeated, "Some people simply don't fit the atmosphere." In fact, she never spoke anything remotely like it again. Maybe she had finally realized that the atmosphere had never been the children. It had been the constant need to impress one another. Ethan is 11 now and still carves the first wooden Christmas star every December. Lily paints tiny snowflakes across each one because she says every family deserves another chance to grow. Our guest list changes from year to year. Our menu changes. The weather changes. The one thing that never changes is this. Nobody has to earn an invitation anymore. The wooden star that once sat alone on my snow-covered porch now hangs above our table every Christmas, surrounded by dozens of imperfect ornaments made by imperfect hands. It reminds me that the strongest families are never the quietest or the most elegant. They're simply the ones where love is never conditional. Because the moment someone tells your children they're too much for the room, the real problem isn't the children. A home isn't defined by who fits the atmosphere, it is defined by who never has to earn a place inside it.